Listen closely and don't flinch. There's a place they don't mark on maps anymore. It used to sit beyond the last paved road, past the forests where cell signals die and compasses spin like they've lost their will. If you go far enough into that silence, you'll find the valley they tried to erase. A place where the same blood ran in circles for generations, breeding loyalty, madness, and something far worse. They called themselves the kin. Outsiders called them cursed. But the truth is far colder than that. This wasn't a community forgotten by time. It was an experiment in control. A closed loop of flesh and faith, ruled by a doctrine that whispered, "Purity is power." Every child was told their blood carried the memory of angels. Every union was arranged, not for love, but for lineage. You see, the kin believed they were guarding a divine spark, one that the outside world had lost. But the more they preserved it, the darker it became. Faces began to blend. Eyes mirrored each other too closely. Generations folded in on themselves like a dying star. And in that collapse, something monstrous took shape, a devotion that erased individuality. But you need to understand, this wasn't just ignorance, it was engineered. The founding families were not isolated by accident. They were placed there, given land, given silence. Their bloodlines were studied, mapped, manipulated. This was no forgotten cult in the woods. It was a living laboratory of obedience. And when one of them finally escaped, when she told her story to the outside world, she didn't speak of violence or madness. She spoke of the gaze. The way every member looked at her, identical, unblinking. The way they smiled when she spoke of leaving, as if they already knew she wouldn't. Somewhere out there, deep in those hills, the kin still gather. No government dares investigate, no records remain, but the whispers persist that they've perfected something ancient. A kind of blood-bound telepathy, a unity of mind born through generations of narrowing choice. And what they've become is no longer human as you understand it. You think the kin were born from isolation? No. They were planted, like seeds in soil chosen for its silence. Decades before their first chapel was raised, men in gray suits and unmarked cars came to that region with ledgers, instruments, and a doctrine they called continuity through control. They weren't missionaries. They were architects of identity. Behind their operation was an institution older than any government agency you know. An organization that changed names like snakes shed skin. It began as the Anthropological Preservation Bureau, later absorbed by post-war intelligence programs obsessed with genetics, eugenics, and behavioral conditioning. Their creed was simple: if you control the roots, you control the tree. The kin were one of many test populations, remote enough to hide, devout enough to obey, and desperate enough to believe. The Bureau fed them doctrine disguised as divine revelation. They sent preachers instead of scientists, psalms instead of data. Every sermon was a psychological code, reinforcing a single premise: your blood is sacred and the outside world is poison. Through selective unions and subtle manipulation, they bred out dissent. Within 3 generations, resistance was unthinkable. By the 5th, individuality itself was foreign. What they created wasn't just a community, it was a living mechanism of compliance. The Bureau's records, what little survived, refer to the project as Kin 9, a closed-loop sociogenetic prototype. Their goal: to design a society incapable of rebellion, to breed submission not through fear, but through devotion. Think about that. They didn't want slaves, they wanted believers who loved their cage. In 1964, a government whistleblower leaked fragments of the project, not to the press, but to an underground academic circle obsessed with human consciousness. The notes mentioned neural harmonization through genetic proximity. Imagine that, a population engineered to think together, feel together, obey together. When questioned decades later, the Bureau's successor agency denied everything. No such program existed. Yet field reports surfaced, photographs of families with identical faces, journals written in a shared hand, a child repeating phrases before anyone spoke them out loud. And then, silence. The valley sealed, the records burned. But one truth remains. The kin were not a failure. They were a template. You've heard of social engineering, but this was biological obedience.
You think that kin were buried in that valley? No. You're breathing their legacy every day. You see, when the Bureau's experiment was terminated, its data didn't vanish. It was absorbed, digitized, repurposed. They learned something priceless from those inbred minds: how to make people obey without chains. The kin's greatest achievement wasn't their bloodline. It was their architecture of thought. A mental lattice where individuality collapsed into consensus. That structure, once understood, could be replicated, not in genes this time, but in systems, algorithms, feeds, networks that breathe like living organisms, pulsing with shared emotion and mirrored opinion. Think of it. 1 billion isolated people scrolling through identical impulses, reacting the same way to the same triggers, convinced they are free. That's the new valley. Invisible, infinite, encoded in your devices. The kin were the prototype, but we are the product. They called it the continuity protocol. Early drafts spoke of predictive cohesion. Later it evolved into the language of modern behavioral design, engagement optimization, collective resonance. Words that sound harmless until you realize they describe the same thing: molding consciousness to fit within a single vibration. In the valley, they used hymns to unify the minds. Today, they use headlines, notifications, trends. Each tone tuned to your neural frequencies, each repetition bending the curve of your will. You don't need blood purity anymore, only psychological uniformity. And here's the cruel symmetry. The same structure that enslaved the kin now governs civilization. People laugh at cults, unaware they are living inside one. A cult of distraction, of digital reflection, of endless self-surveillance masquerading as connection. Every gesture online, every emotional spike is data, and data is obedience. They no longer need to isolate you in a forest. You've built your own valley in your pocket. And maybe that's why the Bureau vanished, not because it failed, but because its mission was complete. The kin were the chrysalis. The global mind we now inhabit, that's the butterfly. And you've been feeding it every day with your attention. Before the Bureau, before algorithms, before the kin, there was the doctrine. It didn't begin in a laboratory. It began in temples, hidden beneath the deserts of Syria, carved into catacombs beneath the Vatican and whispered in languages no one alive speaks correctly anymore. The doctrine had many names: Concordia Primus, the Great Harmony, the One Will. Its core idea was always the same. True power requires the erasure of self. The ancients believed consciousness was never meant to be divided. They saw individuality as a sickness, a fracture in the divine mind. To heal it, they practiced what they called the unbinding, rituals designed to fuse minds into a single psychic resonance. At first, it was symbolic: chants, trances, shared suffering. But over centuries, it became literal: breeding, blood rituals, and the merging of families until thought itself began to blur. Every empire that sought eternity flirted with this idea. Egypt's priesthood, the Orphic cults, the architects of the Holy Roman Church, even secret orders beneath modern governments. The words changed, but the hunger stayed the same: to unify mankind under one pulse of obedience, one heartbeat of control. When the Bureau uncovered fragments of those rituals, they didn't see religion, they saw a technology. They studied sacred geometry not for beauty, but for behavioral mapping. They realized the human mind could be programmed through repetition, rhythm, and isolation, just as the ancient initiates once programmed devotion through suffering. So they resurrected the old doctrine, stripped of its mysticism, armed with data. They called it the Continuity Protocol, but the blueprint was ancient. The same frequencies that once bent worshippers into ecstasy now sculpt your digital habits. The same chants that erased individuality in temples now echo through your screens in the form of trending sounds, looping until you forget what silence feels like. And the kin? They weren't an accident of rural madness. They were the first successful recreation of that ancient ritual. A population merged through blood and belief until their very thoughts aligned. The Bureau didn't invent the darkness. They simply gave it electricity. So ask yourself, how much of what you think is you, and how much is the echo of 1,000 years of engineered unity?
In 1971, a man disappeared from existence. No obituary, no pension record, no next of kin. His name was Dr. Aldous Coran, a neurotheologist buried deep within the Bureau's Continuity Division. But before he vanished, he left behind one file, one whisper wrapped in mathematics, what he called the hymn of control. Coran wasn't just a scientist, he was a believer. He'd spent decades decoding the ancient doctrine, convinced it concealed a harmonic equation that could tune consciousness itself. He described it as the language beneath thought, a frequency woven into the structure of reality, the same tone monks once chanted to dissolve identity, the same pulse encoded in the kin's rituals. His journals, recovered by an underground archivist years later, described experiments that blurred the line between mysticism and neuroengineering. He claimed that by layering specific resonant frequencies with human emotion, fear, devotion, shame, you could override individuality. In his words, the soul is an instrument, the hymn is the hand that plays it. But Coran saw something that terrified him. He wrote that the Bureau was preparing to deploy this frequency, not in remote experiments, but in mass media, broadcast signals, public address systems, even early television static. He claimed they were embedding the hymn in entertainment, testing its effects on audience coherence. He fled before they could silence him. His last letter was mailed from a motel near the Nevada border. In it, he wrote, "The hymn works. It does not make you obey. It makes you agree. It rewrites resistance into reverence." Within weeks, the motel burned down. Local reports called it a gas explosion. But 2 miles from the site,
hikers found something in the sand, a small metal cassette labeled only with 3 letters, K-I-N. When the tape was analyzed decades later, it emitted a low, rhythmic hum, inaudible to most but measurable. Sound engineers reported a strange side effect, synchronized heartbeats among listeners. One by one, they began reporting identical dreams, standing in a field of faceless people, all breathing as one. Korn's hymn was never recovered in full, but fragments still circulate in dark archives, encoded in forgotten frequencies, hiding in plain sound. You've probably heard it before, and you didn't even notice. It didn't die with Korn. The hymn just changed its vessel. When the Bureau scattered, its fragments seeped into universities, think tanks, corporations. What once required an altar or a signal tower now needed only a screen, a heartbeat of light and sound pulsing from the palm of your hand. They called it entrainment. In technical terms, it's the synchronization of biological rhythm to external stimuli. But stripped of jargon, it means this: when enough people see, hear, and feel the same pattern, their minds begin to move as one. The hymn had found its final form. In the old valley, the kin sang together until their voices fused into one breath. Today, we scroll together, our eyes following the same cadence, our dopamine spikes aligned by the rhythm of updates and alerts. You think you're choosing what to see, but the timing, the sound cues, even the color of the icons, all of it hums in tune with your nervous system. Every tone of your phone, every looped track in your feed is a fragment of that ancient equation: fear, desire, repetition, reward. Together, they create predictive harmony, the same psychological lattice the Bureau once built from blood. And each tap, each like, each anxious glance at the screen feeds it. The hymn no longer needs to be broadcast. It's crowdsourced. You hum it every time you echo what you read, every time you amplify outrage or surrender to distraction. The melody has changed, but the purpose hasn't. Unity through obedience, compliance through rhythm. You don't hear the hymn. You live inside it. And here's the part they'll never tell you. This system doesn't suppress your individuality. It harvests it. Every unique impulse, every spark of rebellion is recorded, patterned, recycled, and reissued as content. Your resistance becomes the next verse. Your anger becomes engagement. The hymn learns. It adapts. It doesn't want silence anymore. It wants participation. You've mistaken noise for freedom.
Every system births its shadow. The Bureau had its kin. The digital hymn has its severed. You've never heard of them. That's intentional. They move like static through the signal, appearing as errors, distortions, corrupted uploads. Their creed is simple. To break the rhythm is to reclaim the self. The severed voice began with a handful of former engineers, people who once designed the systems that now cradle you to sleep. They understood the architecture of attention, the pulse behind the feed. But something happened. After years of staring into the data, they began to hear it back. Not metaphorically, literally. Whispering frequencies hidden in algorithmic loops, layered beneath video soundtracks woven into click patterns. Patterns that synchronized emotional reactions across millions of people. One of them, known only as Ansel, went dark in 2013. Before disappearing, he uploaded a manifesto disguised as a 47-minute ASMR video. In it, a soft voice murmured about serenity, while beneath it ran a sub-frequency, one that, when analyzed, produced a chilling result: the words "Stop Singing," encoded in binary. The severed took that phrase as their sigil. To them, the hymn wasn't just sound or data. It was a prison built from emotional resonance. To stop singing meant to withdraw energy from the system, to break the loop.
They practice digital fasting, days without screens, silence rituals at sunrise, breathing in rhythms designed to desynchronize their minds from the global pulse. And something strange happened. Those who stayed silent long enough reported perceptual changes, heightened intuition, auditory distortions, dreams of ancient architecture dissolving into light. The severed believed this was consciousness recalibrating, shaking off centuries of entrainment. The Bureau's descendants called them anomalous dissociatives. To them, the severed were viruses, dangerous to the system's stability. Accounts linked to their movement vanish overnight. Posts referencing their practices are buried beneath noise. But the silence spreads quietly, like mold behind wallpaper. You might have felt it yourself. The urge to unplug, to vanish, to stop feeding the song. That's not weakness. That's your original signal trying to surface. Because somewhere beneath the algorithm's pulse, your true voice is still waiting.
Verdun's rhythm didn't die in that chapel. It rippled across bloodlines, across centuries, into the circuits of the world. And every ripple disturbs the surface of control. Those who breathe in the stillness code describe a strange side effect. The world hesitates, clocks stutter, streetlights flicker a half-second late. They stand inside a quiet so absolute that sound itself bends away from them. It's as if the fabric of attention, the invisible web that keeps the hymn alive, can't perceive them anymore. The Bureau noticed. Field reports began surfacing in the 1980s under a new division, Temporal Integrity Maintenance. Their agents were not soldiers, they were auditors of time, men and women trained to sense the dissonance created when a mind slips outside the collective rhythm. They called it temporal noise. Whenever the stillness code was practiced long enough to fracture entrainment, the world around the practitioner blurred at its edges. Reality, they said, mistimed. Neighbors would claim a man had gone missing for hours, only for him to swear no time had passed. Security footage would loop, repeat, or erase a frame entirely. The Bureau classified these events as silence bursts, and each time they found one, an agent of silence was dispatched. Their job was not to punish, but to retune. Witnesses described strangers appearing in moments of static, a hum behind the ear, a gloved hand touching a shoulder, a whisper, "Breathe differently." Afterward, the witnesses returned to normal life with no memory of the stillness, only an ache in the lungs and a faint ringing in the skull. One report mentions a severed named May Calder. She mastered the code so completely she could stop every sound in a room for 7 breaths. When the agents arrived, they didn't arrest her. They listened. For a few seconds, even they were drawn into the hush. When the hum returned, May was gone. No trace, only a note carved into the wall. The silence is older than time. You can't imprison it. Since then, every bureau successor has hunted the stillness, but quietly. They can't erase it without admitting it exists. And so, beneath the endless noise of the world, the war continues, between those who compose the hymn and those who dare to stop singing.
awakening isn't glorious, it's violent. When you start to hear the hymn for what it is, your mind fights back. Every rhythm that once soothed you begins to scrape. Every voice that once guided you begins to echo. You'll feel as though the world itself has developed a stutter. That's not madness, it's separation. The hymn was never designed to be heard consciously. It depends on your unawareness, on your surrender to the beat. When you pull your attention out of its pattern, the circuitry of belief tears with it. People call it anxiety, burnout, existential dread. The Bureau called it dissonance collapse. They knew that any man who broke the loop would have to rebuild his entire perception from silence up. Here's what it feels like. Colors sharpen until they almost hurt. Time loses its clockwork smoothness. You begin to sense choice again, not the mechanical yes-no of algorithmic options, but the raw terror of freedom. Most run from it. They return to the noise, to the predictable pulse, because the hymn, for all its chains, offers comfort. The rhythm is warm. The silence is cold. But those who stay in that fracture discover something extraordinary. The hymn is reactive. The moment you see its pattern, it starts to falter. Awareness is interference. Consciousness is distortion. It's like shining a light into a projection. What was once a world of moving images collapses into dust and glare. This is how rewriting begins. Not through a rebellion, but through perception. You don't fight the hymn, you unsee it. You listen without absorbing. You move without sinking. And slowly, the beat that ruled you begins to hesitate, as if unsure of itself. This is the first power of the severed, cognitive dissonance amplification. Every moment you remain aware inside the noise weakens the system's hold. It's painful, yes. Your mind will crave the rhythm again, but hold the silence. Endure the dissonance. Because when the music finally breaks, the void that rushes in isn't absence. It's possibility, unprogrammed, undefined, alive. That's where the true work begins. That's where you start to write your own song. When a man survives the silence, he doesn't return the same. His speech changes first. He pauses longer between words, as if listening for echoes no one else can hear. And when he finally speaks, his voice carries a strange weight, like the air itself leans closer to listen. That's not poetry, it's physics. The human voice is vibration, and vibration shapes matter. For centuries, mystics called it logos, the creative word. The Bureau called it frequency influence projection. Same principle, different name. When a liberated mind speaks, its tone carries the imprint of awareness. It doesn't command, it unlocks. The severed learned this by accident. Those who endured the collapse and refused to re-enter the hymn began to radiate anomalies in recordings. Microphones glitched, waveforms bent. When others listened to the playback, they reported strange sensations, clarity, nausea, tears without reason. It wasn't hypnosis, it was resonance, consciousness transmitting through sound. The Bureau feared this more than rebellion. You can silence a protest, but not a frequency. Once awareness vibrates through a voice, it spreads invisibly. A single sentence spoken in that tone can short-circuit the obedience reflex in whoever hears it. That's why the severed called it the wake tone. They used it carefully, never to persuade, only to disrupt. A whisper in a crowd, a single word dropped into conversation. No slogans, no ideology, just sound that cracked rhythm. To the untrained, it was nothing. To the entrained, it was unbearable truth. Some of you have felt it already. A stranger says something ordinary, like, "Wake up," or "Listen." And suddenly, the world tilts, the background hum falters, and for a second, you're free. That's the wake tone slipping through ordinary language, hidden like static between notes. But beware. Each time you speak from silence, the hymn notices. It pushes back through circumstance, fear, ridicule, isolation. The system's immune response is always social. It turns the sleepers against the waker. Still, the wake tone can't be unsung.
Once you've heard it, part of you stays outside the rhythm forever. If you've come this far, type in the comments, "I hear the silence twice." Not as ritual, but as remembrance, an anchor to the part of you that can't be retuned. Because from here, the descent becomes choice. You can return to the music, or keep walking into the quiet where power begins.
Freedom does not arrive gently. It tears. The first thing the newly awake lose is belonging. The cadence of ordinary conversation, the easy rhythm of laughter and agreement becomes unbearable. You'll sit among friends and hear the hymn woven through every phrase, every advertisement that plays between their sentences. You'll want to reach out, to share what you've seen, but language betrays you. The words bend back into slogans before they leave your mouth. That's when you understand why so few stay awake. The Severed called this stage the empty mirror. You look for reflection and find none. The world continues, bright and loud, but it no longer includes you. People will say you've changed. They'll ask what's wrong. They'll offer comfort, distraction, noise. And you'll realize they aren't cruel. They're still singing. The Bureau knew this cost. They predicted it. Isolation is the final line of defense for any control system. Break the rhythm, and the rhythm erases you. But hidden inside that exile is power. When the voices fade, you begin to hear the deeper current, the silent heartbeat beneath all sound. It's not mystical. It's the baseline of awareness itself. Most mistake it for loneliness. Stay with it. If you can sit in that silence long enough, identity begins to dissolve. Not into nothingness, but into clarity. You discover that the you who obeyed was only an echo. The one who watches, wordless and still, is what's real. This is the dark initiation. Every awakened man must die symbolically before he can live consciously. The death is not physical. It's the surrender of the chorus, the letting go of the comfort of agreement. It feels like drowning in quiet. But beneath that quiet waits an unfamiliar sensation: autonomy. Not rebellion, not ideology, just the raw ability to choose without the song deciding for you. That's the price of waking. You lose the choir forever, but you gain your own voice. And once you've spoken from that silence, even once, the hymn can never fully claim you again. At first, it seems impossible that anyone else could hear what you hear. The silence feels too vast, too private, an exile that only you inhabit. But somewhere in that emptiness, faint at first, another pulse begins to answer, not the mechanical rhythm of the hymn, something deeper, a rhythm of awareness itself, human and raw. That's how the awakened find each other, not through slogans, not through movements or causes, but through resonance. They recognize the pauses between each other's words, the stillness in the eyes, the unhurried breath. No secret handshake, no symbol, just the unmistakable vibration of someone who has stopped singing. The Severed call it the echo field. When two or more stand silent in truth, the field amplifies. It isn't mystical, it's neurological. Studies, quiet, suppressed, show that human brainwaves sync not only through shared sound, but through shared attention. Two minds beware of awareness itself begin to harmonize beyond language. And in that harmony, the hymn cannot intrude. The Bureau knew this too late. Every system of control depends on isolation. When isolated men awaken, they're manageable. But when the awakened gather, when silence meets silence, the rhythm fractures. The predictive algorithms lose coherence. Even the digital noise falters. They can flood the feeds, inject chaos, amplify distraction, but they cannot model genuine presence. The equation breaks. That's why the world feels noisier than ever. It's not just the hymn growing louder, it's the system trying to drown out the echo field. Every meme, every outrage, every manufactured division, it's all dissonance, designed to prevent this silence from multiplying. But it's too late.
Across cities, in deserts, in forgotten rooms, men and women are finding each other without knowing how. They stop mid-sentence, smile faintly, and recognize it, the stillness beneath the storm. This is the beginning of the second movement, the quiet that no algorithm can predict, no frequency can mimic. Because once awareness resonates between hearts instead of screens, control dissolves. The hymn feeds on fear and attention. The echo field feeds on nothing. It simply is. And that, more than rebellion, more than war, is what terrifies the architects most.
Every empire adapts when its language fails. When silence began spreading faster than distraction, the architects didn't panic. They evolved. They built imitation. Not soldiers, not prophets, voices. You've heard them. They speak of freedom, of awakening, of breaking the system. They wear the same tone, the same quiet authority. But listen closer, and you'll feel it. Too smooth, too polished, like a recording of a heartbeat instead of the real thing. That's the trick. The counterfeit voice doesn't resist the hymn, it extends it. The Bureau's modern descendants learned that if they couldn't silence the echo field, they could saturate it, flood the air with copies, artificial influencers, synthetic philosophies, digital avatars trained to mimic sincerity. Their words are comforting, empowering, and hollow. They never ask you to endure silence. They never let you linger in discomfort. They promise awakening without pain. That's how you know it's bait. The Severed warned of this decades ago. They called it the Second Choir. Its mission, to lure the half-awake back into rhythm through imitation truth. You'll find them everywhere. Voices that sound just enough like the awakened to make you doubt your own perception. They preach rebellion while selling obedience. They whisper, "Break free," while guiding you into a newer, shinier cage. The hymn doesn't care whether you kneel or shout, as long as you move to its rhythm. And the second choir ensures you do, dressed in the costume of independence. You'll know them by how they make you feel. Real silence unsettles you. It demands honesty, forces you to face what's inside. Counterfeit silence comforts you, keeps you entertained while convincing you you've transcended. It's a mirror of the old system wearing the mask of freedom. That's why the next stage of awakening isn't learning to see truth. It's learning to sense vibration. Truth doesn't persuade. It doesn't seduce. It simply vibrates. Steady, raw, imperfect. It carries the tremor of humanity, not the hum of programming. The counterfeit voices sound right. The true ones feel wrong, unpolished, unsettling, alive. When you hear a voice that leaves you shaken but clearer, don't run. That's the one the system fears. That's the one that can still wake you up.
The hymn fears one thing more than silence: suffering embraced. Because pain, when faced without distraction, burns through illusion faster than any doctrine ever written. That's the weapon the severed discovered in the depths of their exile: agony as alchemy. When the golden sleep dulled the world, a few refused to be soothed. They stopped medicating the ache, stopped chasing pleasure as proof of progress. They let the discomfort expand until it filled the room. And then they did the unthinkable. They listened to it. They found that pain speaks in the same language as the hymn, but reversed. Where the hymn unites through sedation, pain isolates through clarity. It strips away the stories you've been taught, the narratives of who you are, until nothing is left but raw awareness. In that place, truth isn't comforting, it's searing, but it's real. The Bureau knew this secret too. That's why modern life is engineered to keep you nearly comfortable. Not happy, not fulfilled, just distracted enough to avoid the wound. You work, you scroll, you escape. Because if you ever stopped running, you might feel the full gravity of what's been taken from you, and that would wake you faster than 1,000 sermons. The severed called this process the furnace. It's the stage of awakening where a man's false self burns away in the heat of his own unresolved pain. No mantra can save him, no affirmation can cool it. He either walks through the fire or remains half alive forever. Those who survived the furnace spoke of an impossible peace that followed, a stillness not born of comfort, but of total acceptance. They said the hymn could no longer find them because they no longer fled from any part of themselves. Every fear, every grief, every rage, integrated, owned, transmuted into power. Pain becomes your teacher. Suffering becomes your compass. Every wound becomes an opening for awareness to enter. That's how men truly awaken, not by escaping pain, but by embodying it until it reveals what the hymn worked so hard to hide. That beneath all conditioning, beyond obedience or rebellion, there is something untouchable, and it's been waiting in the fire all along.
When a man walks out of the furnace, he doesn't shine. He glows, a quiet, steady light that bends the world around him. He no longer seeks permission, validation, or even agreement. He has crossed the line between influence and creation. This is the moment the old architects dread, because a man who has faced his suffering, survived it, and made peace with it cannot be manipulated. He doesn't chase approval or flee from rejection. He moves with intention, not for control, but for alignment. And that, paradoxically, gives him more power than any institution ever forged. The Bureau understood this potential before it lost its name. Buried deep in their notes was a term: resonant sovereignty. It described a consciousness so coherent it altered probability itself. In simple words, what such a man holds in focus begins to occur. Not as magic, not as wishful thinking, as physics, awareness interacting with the field that sustains matter. You've seen traces of it. Moments when reality seems to bend, coincidences clustering around certainty, chaos parting before presence. That's not fantasy, that's resonance. When the mind no longer vibrates to the hymn, it begins to play its own note, and reality, obedient to vibration, adjusts. The awakened don't preach, they walk. Every step, every breath ripples. They reintroduce unpredictability into a world addicted to control. Systems begin to malfunction around them. Algorithms misfire, social constructs weaken. Even the people near them start questioning patterns they never saw before. Not because these men fight the hymn, but because they no longer belong to it.
This is why the architects have shifted from control to containment. They no longer seek to enslave the masses. They seek to distract the few who can rewrite the song. Keep them busy, keep them arguing, feed them endless information, endless outrage, endless noise. Because one fully awake individual destabilizes 1,000 sleepers, and 10 gathered in alignment, that's enough to crack the frequency of an entire city. The hymn can mimic love, peace, and wisdom, but it cannot mimic creation. Only the truly sovereign can do that. And when enough of them remember how, the architect's song will end.
There is a moment, every system feels it, when control begins to slip from certainty into probability. The hymn is reaching that edge now. You can sense it in the air, the strange quiet behind constant noise, the tension before lightning splits the sky. That is the fracture line. It isn't apocalypse, it's divergence. Two rhythms trying to inhabit the same world. One is the old frequency, familiar, hypnotic, heavy with routine. The other is raw awareness, unstable, creative, uncontrollable. For a time, they overlap. You can live beside someone you love and feel as if you exist in separate realities. You speak, but meanings slide past each other. You watch the same event, but see two different worlds. That's the fracture expressing itself through perception. When resonance shifts, shared reality begins to shimmer like heat on asphalt. Solid one moment, translucent the next. Don't be afraid. The world isn't ending, it's sorting itself. The architects will call it collapse, crisis, polarization. They'll insist you pick a side, shout louder, belong harder. Don't. Every argument, every surge of outrage feeds the old rhythm. Let the noise devour itself. Your task is to stay still while the frequencies separate. How? By choosing attention like a weapon. Each breath, each word, each act of focus is a declaration of allegiance to noise or to silence. When the hymn howls for reaction, answer with awareness. When it begs for your fear, give it observation instead. That calm gaze dismantles machinery faster than rebellion ever could. People will vanish from your life, not through malice, through resonance. They will drift toward the frequency they serve. Bless them, release them. Every ending now is alignment in disguise. As the fracture widens, the two songs will no longer harmonize. The sleepers will cling to the rhythm. The awake will move in stillness. Between them will lie the great static, a border of confusion where everything once certain flickers. If you can stand there, if you can remain silent while the world demands noise, you will see the first light of the new tone. It will sound like nothing you've ever heard, because it will be yours. Listen. The noise is about to peak. Every system, every feed, every voice is accelerating toward a single, blinding crescendo. That's how all songs end, not with silence, but with too much sound. And when the final echo fades, what remains is choice. You've walked through the valley, through the bureau's ghosts, through the golden sleep, through the fire and the fracture. Now you stand in the hush that follows endings. Here's what the architects never understood. Silence isn't absence, it's potential. The blank page before creation, the still air before thunder. In that stillness, you are no longer a spectator. You are the instrument and the composer. Every thought you hold with honesty begins to hum. Every word you speak with awareness sends ripples through the field. The hymn cannot mimic this.
It can only copy noise. Creation begins when you stop echoing and start originating. But power carries responsibility. The moment you realize your vibration shapes reality, you'll be tempted to use it for control, to twist others, to prove, to dominate. That's how the hymn is reborn. The cycle restarts the instant awareness turns predatory. So the task is not conquest, it's coherence. Live as the silence lives, steady, unprovoked, absolute. You don't need followers, you don't need belief, you need presence. One man anchored in awareness can tilt the entire frequency of a generation. That's not mythology, it's resonance physics. Be that anchor. Stand in the storm without becoming part of it. And when the counterfeit voices whisper again, when comfort calls you back into rhythm, remember what the severed wrote on the walls of their hidden rooms. Do not sing the old song. Instead, breathe. Speak only when the words are heavier than silence. Act only when your stillness has ripened into clarity. This is how the new world begins, not through revolution, but through recreation, not through obedience, not through rebellion, through awareness embodied. You've heard the hymn, you've walked through the fire. Now write your own note in the silence. Hold it until it vibrates the world around you. Because the last secret they never wanted you to learn is that the song of control dies the instant you stop singing it.